Hey there, Drowsy Historian here. Tonight you're not a knight or a queen or some unfortunate peasant with an unfortunate case of bubonic plague. No, tonight you're a hero, allegedly. You've been recruited for war work, which is the cheery, ribbon-wrapped term for handling explosives in a building made entirely of bad decisions and flammable air. You won't be carrying a rifle, but you will be stuffing bombs with your bare hands while slowly turning yellow. They call you a canary girl, which sounds adorable, like something that chirps in a gilded cage. And in a way, it is. Except the cage is a munitions factory, and the chirping is the sound of your lungs trying to breathe through poison. Before we start melting your insides in the name of patriotism, do me a small favour. Leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from and what time it is there. If you'd like early access to these soothing little horrors, ad-free audio of the episodes, or just want to support the show, you'll find the Patreon link in the description. But for now, lie back, get comfortable. Let's begin. You're 16, maybe 17, and the war posters say your country needs you. Not to fight, of course not. You're a girl, and girls don't get rifles. The war has taken the men who drove the trains, unloaded the docks, mended the roads, and hammered the nails. It's taken the grocers and the milkmen and the boys who used to pester you outside the bakery. The factories, suddenly hollowed of testosterone, don't stop running. They just call for backup. And that backup is you. You and every other woman between the ages of barely legal and not pregnant yet. They used to say your place was in the home. Now your place is in a factory full of explosives, wearing rubber-soled shoes and a cotton uniform so thin you could use it as a handkerchief. The government calls it war work. The posters show smiling women with strong arms and tidy curls, rolling shells into place like they're baking something. You don't see the girls with burns up their necks, or the ones who come home coughing blood. No, you get a jolly little leaflet telling you how important you are, that you'll be part of history, that you'll help bring the boys home. And somewhere in the small print, buried under all the slogans, is the part they don't say out loud. The work is toxic. Not just unpleasant. Not just wear gloves and wash your hands dangerous. No, full-body, system-wide, long-term, organ-destroying toxic. But you don't know that yet. Nobody tells you, and even if they did, you probably wouldn't believe them. Because they also tell you you're a hero. And heroes don't ask too many questions. You sign up anyway, because your wages triple overnight. Because it means you can buy boots that aren't second-hand and send your little sister to school with more than bread crusts and a prayer. Because your friend is already working there and says it's not that bad, really. Because scrubbing rich people's underthings for 6p an hour has started to feel like a very small death. This one at least promises to be dramatic. You tell yourself it'll only be for a little while, just until the war ends, just until things go back to normal. Normal, it turns out, is on indefinite leave. The moment you arrive, the language shifts. You're not just a girl anymore. You're a munitionette. It sounds almost French, almost glamorous. The newspapers call you the army behind the army. Even the king sends his thanks, though never in person. There are speeches, ceremonies, photos of pretty girls posing with giant shells like they're in some ghastly calendar. You practice smiling for them. Not because you feel proud, necessarily, but because it's easier than explaining that your teeth already feel loose and your head started ringing like a kettle left too long on the stove. There are rules, of course. No makeup, no jewellery, no metal of any kind. You are scanned before every shift like contraband. Your hair is tied back. Your fingernails are clipped short. You are discouraged from gossip, encouraged to work quickly, and reminded, gently, repeatedly, that any mistake could be your last. They don't use the word explosion, they say incident, as if what happens here could ever be accidental. The work is simple, in theory, repetitive. You fill shells, you seal them, you stack them. Sometimes you weigh powder. Sometimes you stir it into a thick yellow paste that looks like mustard, and smells like regrets, you are never told the names of the compounds. Just that they are necessary and effective and classified. You learn not to breathe too deeply, not to touch your face, not to complain when your throat feels like it's lined with ash or when your fingertips start peeling like you're molting. At first, your body adapts, sort of. Your appetite vanishes. Your menstrual cycle packs its bags and disappears without a forwarding address. You get dizzy in the mornings and jittery in the evenings. Your dreams smell like burning. And still you get up and go, 6 days a week, sometimes 7 if there's a quota to meet. You tell yourself it's just your nerves, or the cold, or the long hours. But deep down, you start to suspect that something inside you is changing, and not in a patriotic, character-building kind of way. The other girls notice it too. They make jokes to keep the fear at bay. They call themselves the Canaries, after the yellow tint your skin starts to take on. At first, it's just your hands, then your face, then the whites of your eyes. You all pretend it's funny, that you're just birds in a gilded cage, chirping away for the war effort. But no one explains what happens when the cage starts to rust, or when the chirping stops. Your supervisor keeps a notebook, not for productivity, but for symptoms. Who fainted? Who vomited? Who bled from the gums? If your name ends up in that notebook too many times, you get reassigned to the powder rooms, a dim euphemism for light duty, which is itself a euphemism for being too sick to do real work. If things get worse, you might be sent to the infirmary. If they get really bad, you're quietly let go. Not fired, just excused, as if your body has simply opted out. You hear whispers, of course. Girls who dropped dead on the walk home. Girls who miscarried in the toilets. Girls whose skin turned so yellow their families tried to bleach them. It sounds unreal until it doesn't. Until you realise your urine glows faintly in the dark. Until you taste chemicals in your tea. Until your reflection in the mirror looks like it's been stained with bile. You stop telling your mother how you're doing. She wouldn't understand. She'd only worry. And there's nothing she can do anyway. Still, you stay. Because what's the alternative? To quit means shame, gossip, questions. It means giving up the one job that pays enough to feed everyone at home. It means abandoning the war. It means becoming once again invisible. And besides, the damage is already done, isn't it? You've seen the dust, felt the burns, watched the yellow creep up your arms like ivy on stone. You might as well get paid for it while you still can. So you keep showing up. You smile when the foreman walks by. You hum with the others during long shifts. You clutch your lunch like it's armour. You pretend not to notice the girl next to you, trembling so hard she spills powder onto her lap. You're not a soldier, but you're on the front lines of something. Something domestic, something industrial, something that eats girls from the inside out and still manages to call them heroes. It starts with your fingertips. You don't notice it at first, just a slight staining around the nails, like turmeric you forgot to wash off. You scrub harder. It doesn't help. The yellow spreads across your palms, then up your wrists, sneaking like smoke into the fine creases of your skin. By the end of the week, it's reached your forearms. Your reflection becomes harder to recognize. Your skin doesn't look sick so much as chemical, like something died in a vat rather than born of flesh and blood. You touch your face and leave a smear. You wonder if this is what it means to be useful. By the end of the second week, the other girls start calling you a canary. At first it's just the older ones, the ones who've been here longer, whose laughter sounds a little too practiced, whose skin looks more yellow than yours. The nickname's supposed to be funny. You're the canary in the coal mine, the one who drops first when the air turns lethal. It's meant to be cheeky, almost affectionate. You try to laugh along, but you can't help noticing that no one ever explains what happens to a canary after it stops singing. The factory doesn't officially acknowledge the colour change. There are no bulletins, no notices, no safety lectures. If you ask, you're told the staining is harmless, just a sign that you're doing the work properly. that your body is absorbing exactly what it's supposed to. You're reassured by people who don't wear the uniform and who leave the building before the light goes. When you mention the headaches or the dizzy spells, you're advised to drink more tea and avoid thinking too much. You're already glowing. What more do you want? At home, your family notices. Your sister won't sit next to you at dinner. Your father says you smell like a dentist's office. Your landlady pulls you aside to ask if you've been meddling with foreign ointments. You tell them it's the factory, that everyone comes out a little yellow. They don't believe you. Or worse, they do. And they start looking at you like you're contagious. You scrub your face with vinegar, then with lemon juice, then with carbolic soap until your skin feels raw. The colour stays. You begin to understand that it's not on you, it's in you. At work, you start to spot the signs in others. The yellow is everywhere. On collars, on cuffs, in the creases around mouths that never quite smile fully anymore. It's not just skin either. It gets into your hair, your teeth, the whites of your eyes. There's a girl in your section who looks like she's been carved from candle wax and dipped in mustard. Another keeps her gloves on, even in the break room. You don't ask why, you don't have to. Her fingernails fell off last month. She jokes about it now, says she'll save money on manicures. Humour becomes its own survival mechanism. You and the other girls start rating each other's yellowness, like it's a competition. You're looking extra luminous today, someone will say, and everyone will laugh like it's all perfectly normal. You give yourselves ridiculous nicknames, Goldie, Daffy, Miss Marigold, and pretend not to notice when one of you doesn't show up for a few days. When they come back pale and trembling, or don't come back at all, you lower your voice and keep your hands busy. You learn to speak around fear, never through it. The supervisors encourage the jokes. It keeps morale high, they say. It keeps the work moving. No one wants to manage a room full of frightened girls. Laughter is cheaper than medical care. If you can still joke, you must be fine. And if you're fine, the factory can keep grinding on without interruption. You become very good at pretending, even when your skin itches like it's been dusted with powdered glass, even when your gums start to bleed while you eat, even when you wake up in the middle of the night and can't remember your own name for a full minute. Sometimes one of the girls tries to quit. She'll say it's too much. The colour, the sickness, the silence. But the foreman reminds her that her brother's still fighting in France, that if she leaves, someone else has to take her place. That good girls don't abandon the war effort. And anyway, where else would she go? The money's too good, the work too essential. You watch her nod and stay and slowly yellow like the rest of you. On your days off, if you're lucky enough to get them, you notice that your body feels different than it used to. Your appetite is gone. Your skin flakes in patches. Your heartbeat feels off, like it's keeping time with a different rhythm than the rest of the world. You catch yourself staring at things for too long. You forget the ends of your own sentences. You stop wearing makeup because it just slides off your face. You stop going to church because people whisper. You stop writing letters because you don't know how to make your life sound normal anymore. And yet somehow you still show up for work. Because everyone else does. Because it's what's expected. Because if you stop, it means admitting the damage is real. And no one wants to be the first to say it out loud. You fill shells with fingers that don't feel quite connected to you. You walk to the factory in the morning fog and back home in the evening haze and feel, more and more, like a moving part in someone else's machine. You glow, you ache, you fade, but you keep going. By the end of your first month, you don't think of yourself as yellow anymore. You think of everyone else as unnaturally pale. The world beyond the gates looks bleached, sterile, unreal. You belong to the factory now, or maybe it belongs to you. Either way, you know what you are. You're a canary girl, and like any bird in a cage, you've learned to sing without opening your mouth. The factory was never designed with comfort in mind. It was designed to make bombs, and to do so quickly, cheaply, and with a workforce that didn't complain too loudly. Step through the main doors, and the first thing that hits you isn't the noise or the heat, it's the smell. It coats the inside of your mouth, before your brain has time to name it. A mixture of chemicals, sweat, scorched oil, and something sweet that doesn't belong in the air, like burnt sugar boiled with rust. You get used to it eventually, or rather, your body does. Your mind never really does. It just learns not to argue. The walls are a strange shade of grey-green, but you rarely see them beneath the layers of yellow dust. It settles on everything. The tables, the equipment, your uniform, your eyelashes. You can taste it constantly, like cloves left too long, in your teeth. Your lips stay cracked, and your tongue feels numb more often than not. Nobody hands you a mask. No one offers gloves. The theory is that protection would slow you down. And what's a little chemical exposure compared to victory? You're expected to memorize your section's layout quickly, because asking for help is frowned upon. Too many questions suggest you're not paying attention. The rooms are long, narrow, and built with fire breaks and blast walls that make them feel like a maze. There are no windows. Natural light is a luxury, and glass is a liability. If something explodes, you don't want shards flying across the floor. Everything in the room is flame retardant, except for the work itself. You joke, quietly, that the only flammable thing in the room is you. You work beside girls who've been there longer, who move with a precision that borders on mechanical. Their fingers fly through the motions. Fill, tamp, seal, pass. They don't look up often. You learn by watching. Your supervisor doesn't teach, she corrects, and not gently. If you drop powder on the table, you're given a warning. If you spill it on the floor, you're written up. If you do it twice, you're reassigned, if you're lucky, or removed entirely. The unspoken rule is simple. Be quick, be quiet, don't die. There are signs posted on every wall, not safety warnings. Those are too optimistic. No, these are reminders of quotas. You are told how many shells must be completed by midday, how many trays of powder must be processed per hour. There's a big board above the entrance that counts how many bombs this factory has produced since the war began. It's meant to inspire pride. You mostly ignore it, except when the numbers flicker and change, as if they're haunted by the very things they tally. The factory is always hot. Even in winter, the heat from the machinery and the chemical reactions keeps the temperature well above comfort. You're told not to sweat because when moisture mixes with TNT powder, it can cause burns. But there's no air conditioning, and your uniform is barely breathable. Some girls faint. Some develop rashes across their chests, under their arms, in places they're too embarrassed to mention. You learn to bring extra cloth to wipe yourself down during breaks, though you're rarely granted enough time to do more than gulp water and get back to work. There are inspectors, of course, men in clean suits who drift through the aisles like ghosts. They carry clipboards and stop occasionally to watch your hands. They don't speak unless you speak first, and even then, they rarely answer. You never see them lift anything. You never see them covered in yellow. You suspect they know exactly how dangerous the place is and how replaceable you are. When one of them marks something on his form, everyone nearby works a little faster. You notice the machinery most when it breaks. Most days it hums in the background, a constant low drone like insects trapped in a metal jar. But when it stalls or hiccups, the silence becomes unbearable. You don't realize how loud it is until it stops, and then you feel the room inhale. Every girl frozen, waiting for the hiss, the snap, the blast. If the machine doesn't explode, you go back to work. If it does, well, there's a protocol. It involves not screaming. It involves walking, not running. It involves pretending that this is normal. There are safety drills, but no one takes them seriously. The idea of calmly evacuating in a single file line after a table goes up in flames is laughable. You know that if something happens, you'll either be lucky or you won't. The walls are reinforced, the floors are chemical resistant, and your body is none of those things. There's no first aid beyond a bottle of vinegar and a slightly sticky bandage tin. If you get burned, they rinse the area with water and tell you to sit down for a bit. If you faint, they give you tea. If you vomit, they wipe it up and move your tray to someone else's station. Your section supervisor is always smiling. She speaks in the same tone whether she's praising someone for speed or sending them to the infirmary. You suspect the smile is part of the job, a feature, not a feeling. She claps when quotas are met and scolds girls who lag behind. She never yells, that would make her seem human. Instead, she addresses failures the same way one might comment on the weather. Oh dear, looks like you've mismeasured again. Do be careful. We wouldn't want another incident like last week. At lunch, you sit in a designated eating zone where the dust has been somewhat swept aside. Your fingers are stained and shaking. You can't taste much anymore, but you still try to eat. Some girls nap. Others chat in low voices about anything but work. You talk about songs or boots or men you used to know. You avoid discussing the girl who got carried out on a stretcher 2 days ago. You avoid thinking about how long it's been since you saw her. By the time your shift ends, your body feels like it belongs to someone else. Your joints ache. Your scalp tingles. Your mouth is coated in a strange bitterness you can't spit out. You try not to look down at your hands because they look more yellow today than they did yesterday, and you don't want to know what that means. You clock out without saying much. You file out through the disinfectant fog they spray at the door. You walk home through streets that feel too quiet, too clean, too far removed from the place you've just left behind. And in the morning, you'll do it all again, because the factory is built to keep going. And now, so are you. There's a ritual to entering the factory, and you learn it faster than you learn to lace your boots. First, you strip. Not completely, just enough to remind you that your body's not really your own here. You remove your corset stays, your hairpins, any jewellery, any buckles, any buttons that aren't made of bone or cloth. No metal is allowed past the threshold. A single spark could reduce the entire building, and everyone in it, to scorched timber and bone dust. It's not just safety, it's survival, and it's taken deadly seriously. The search happens every shift. It doesn't matter how many times you've passed inspection before. One mistake, one forgotten clip, or a decorative stitch with a wire thread, and you could be the reason the building erupts. You're looked over by a matron with a gaze like a bayonet. She checks your uniform, your hair, even your underthings. She does not smile. She doesn't need to. Her silence carries the weight of every girl who came in wearing the wrong thing and never came out. Your shoes are special issue. Thick rubber soles, no nails in the heels, no decorative anything. They squeak slightly as you walk, but that's the sound of safety. Your undergarments are also issued by the factory. The fabric is coarse and uncomfortable, but it doesn't generate static, and static is the enemy here. You'd never realised how many ways the human body could conduct energy until you were taught how to neutralise yourself. You are a fire risk wrapped in skin, and the building is full of things that detonate when touched too hard. Before you're allowed to start work, you're sent through the changing area, where you deposit your personal belongings into a little cubby with a number that never changes. Girls have a habit of glancing at their cubby on the way out, as if it might be empty, or as if the act of reclaiming your hairpin means you survived another day. You memorise your number quickly. You handle your own belongings gently. You've started treating ordinary things, a comb, a scarf, a button, like they're sacred. Outside things, safe things. Then you're directed through a narrow corridor toward the decontamination bench, though no one calls it that. It's just a bench, but it marks the spot where the rules begin. You sit there each morning and adjust your uniform, tighten your laces, pat yourself down to double check you didn't accidentally smuggle danger in through the seam of a skirt or a forgotten necklace. Some girls hum while they do it. Others whisper little mantras. Not prayers exactly, just reminders. No metal, no matches, no mistakes. You hear it so often it becomes background noise. Once inside, the air feels different, heavier, charged. You can't see it, but you can feel it press against your skin. The yellow dust is already clinging to the sleeves of your smock before you reach your workstation. You haven't even started yet, and you're already absorbing it. It works through the pores, through your breath, through the whites of your eyes. No amount of inspection can keep it out. The ritual doesn't stop the danger, it just slows it down, makes it feel like something you can control. By the end of the shift, your hands are tacky with residue. You try not to touch your face, but the itching makes it hard. You wipe your forehead and then curse yourself for doing it. You feel the grit beneath your nails, though you keep them trimmed to stubs. You stop tasting food properly. Everything has a faintly chemical sweetness, as if someone stirred saccharin into your porridge and didn't mix it well. Even your tea, once the only comforting part of your day, now tastes like it's been steeped in varnish. You still drink it. The supervisors say it's normal, that the taste is just part of the process, that it doesn't mean anything. But you know that TNT poisoning can sweeten the sweat, that the body excretes it through the skin, the saliva, the urine. Your body becomes part of the process, not just handling poison, but becoming a vessel for it. You joke about it with the other girls. I'm so sweet, I could kill a rat with my kiss. The laughter is shallow, but you take it anyway. On days when the air is especially thick, you feel it settle in your lungs, like damp ash. You cough until your ribs ache. The inside of your mouth goes raw. You check your handkerchief and pretend not to notice the faint pink smear. No one else says anything, so neither do you. You wipe it away and keep moving. You keep sealing shells, tamping powder, wiping down your station. Your fingertips are stained permanently now. Your palms too. When you bathe, the water turns a cloudy amber, and it doesn't wash off. It never really does. You try not to think about how much of the factory has gotten inside you, but it's hard not to notice. Your skin smells like antiseptic, even after a day off. Your sweat leaves yellow marks on your pillowcase. Your urine sometimes glows faintly in the dark, like something radioactive. You learn to ignore these things. You learn to treat them as inconveniences like blisters or stubbed toes, because if you don't, you'll go mad. And madness is not a recognised condition here. It's just another form of inefficiency. Each evening, you reverse the ritual. You change out of your uniform in silence. You check your skin for fresh burns, strange rashes, unexplained bruises. You re-don your metal jewellery and stiff corset, as though trying to remember the shape of the person you were before shift began. It doesn't always work. Sometimes the uniform feels like it's still on you. Even hours later, you'll lie in bed and imagine you can still feel the powder in your pores. You'll wash your hands 4 times before dinner and still smell the TNT on your fingers. You've heard stories of girls being stopped on the street, asked why they're yellow. Some lie and say it's jaundice. Others say they've been eating too many carrots. You said that once and the man didn't laugh. He just looked at you like you were something strange. Not quite sick, but not quite human anymore. You realise slowly that he might be right. You're not quite what you were. And tomorrow you'll wake up and start the ritual again. Because the factory waits. Because your number is still on that cubby. Because your skin is already too stained to pretend otherwise. The contamination isn't just part of the job. It is the job. And there's no way to do it clean. The first thing to vanish is your period. At first it feels like a blessing. No more cramps. No more bleeding through rough cotton on long shifts. You don't have to ask for time off or sneak rags into the washroom. You joke that your womb has gone on strike for the duration of the war. Some of the older girls say it's just stress. Others say it's the chemicals. You don't know which is worse. The idea that the factory is eating your insides, or the suggestion that you're just too anxious to function properly. Then the skin on your hands begins to split. Not all at once. It starts with fine cracks, the kind that sting when you bend your fingers. You blame the cold at first, or maybe the soap. You try lathering your hands in lard at night, wrapping them in rags, but the cracks widen. The flesh beneath turns red, then purple. You flinch when you touch anything, too hot or too cold. Eventually, you stop flinching. Pain becomes part of the routine. You still clock in. Your fingernails go next. They darken slowly, like bruises blooming beneath the surface. The edges curl upward, dry and brittle. When one falls off entirely, you wrap it in cloth and pretend it's still there. You keep working. There's no point reporting it. Others have lost more. You've seen girls with bandaged fingers, arms in slings, patches of hair missing under their caps. You're not special. You're not an exception. You're part of the slow, quiet unravelling happening all around you. There's a sourness to your breath that wasn't there before. Not just morning breath or skipped meals, something deeper. You can't quite place it, but it reminds you of spoiled meat and metal shavings. You brush your teeth twice a day when you remember, but the smell clings. You catch it on your scarf, on your pillow, even on your own skin. A girl in your row whispers that it's the liver failing, that the TNT builds up in your blood and poisons everything from the inside out. You don't ask where she heard that. You don't want to know. Your eyes go yellow around the edges, jaundice blooming like rot in the whites. It creeps outward, first subtle, then unmistakable. You dab at them with cool cloths, hoping it'll fade. It doesn't. Your vision stays clear, but your face starts to look like it belongs to someone else. Someone sick, someone dying. Your mother wouldn't recognize you now. You're not sure you'd recognize her either. Your memories come and go in strange waves. Names slip. Dates blur. You look at familiar streets and feel like you've never seen them before. The headaches are worst at night. They start behind your eyes, throb across your temples, and settle in the base of your skull like something laying eggs in your brain. You press a cool rag to your forehead, lie still, and count slowly backward from 100. Sometimes that helps, sometimes it doesn't. You've bitten your tongue in your sleep more than once. You wake up with blood in your mouth and no clear idea of where the night went. The factory dreams follow you home. Long hallways, yellow walls, rooms that buzz without sound. You lose weight without trying. Your clothes hang off you. Your joints stand out in new and unpleasant ways. You look brittle, like something that could be snapped in half by accident. Your appetite is a memory. Even when you do eat, the food tastes wrong, bland or bitter or soaked in that strange chemical sweetness that now haunts everything you touch. You chew slowly, sometimes just for the motion. You can't remember the last time you ate something and actually felt full. You bleed from places that shouldn't bleed. Your nose erupts without warning, thin red rivulets that drip onto your workstation and make the supervisors scowl. You tilt your head back and shove cotton into your nostrils like it's nothing. The girl next to you hands you a cloth and doesn't ask questions. It's easier that way. You're not the first to bleed. You won't be the last. If you're still standing, you're considered functional. The line doesn't stop no matter what happens. The work continues. A girl faints beside you, flat onto the floor, arms out like she's asleep. You glance down, but your hands don't stop moving. No one's do. Someone calls for the matron, who arrives with a stretcher and a disapproving frown. The girl is lifted, limbs dangling, and wheeled out like so much defective equipment. Her tray is reassigned before the hour ends. You step over the place where she fell, careful not to disturb the yellow powder. Afterward, during break, someone asks if she'll be back. Another girl shrugs. Only if she's lucky. You nod without meaning to. Lucky means returning. Unlucky means getting your name quietly removed from the schedule. There's no ceremony, no goodbyes, just fewer voices in the lunchroom and a jacket left behind on a hook. Your hair starts falling out in tufts. You try to hide it under your cap, but it gathers in the sink, on your pillow, in the corners of the break room, like evidence you can't sweep away. You comb it gently, slowly, fingers trembling. You tell yourself it's just the season, the stress, the soap, anything but what it really is, and the chemicals chewing through your scalp the same way they've chewed through your hands, your liver, your memory. Your skin doesn't heal the way it used to. Bruises linger, cuts reopen, a scratch on your ankle festers for weeks, oozing a yellowish liquid that smells faintly sweet and faintly wrong. You clean it, bandage it, keep it covered, but it never quite closes. You stop mentioning these things out loud. People get nervous when you describe the ways your body has stopped obeying you. Nervous people are liabilities, and liabilities get reassigned. Eventually, the horror becomes routine. You stop thinking of it as sickness. It's just your new shape, the version of you that exists inside the factory, made of brittle bones and sour breath and fluorescent sweat. You don't remember what it felt like to be healthy. You don't even remember when it started to change. You just remember showing up. Clocking in, clocking out, bleeding, aching, glowing, bending, and still standing. You are, against all odds, still standing. It starts as just another shift. You arrive in the same uniform, carrying the same lunch tin, walking the same narrow path past the warning signs and checkpoint gates. The air smells no different, chemical, damp, scorched at the edges, and the dust is already clinging to your sleeves before you're halfway to your bench. Someone in your section is humming under her breath. Another girl is coughing, quietly, like she's trying not to be noticed. You sit down, flex your stiff fingers, and begin measuring out powder like you've done 100 times before. The room is hot, the kind of hot that prickles against your scalp and seeps into the backs of your knees. It makes you drowsy, slow. You blink more often to stay alert. You focus on your rhythm. Fill, tamp, seal, stack. You keep your eyes down, your movement steady, and try not to think about the burning sensation crawling up your throat. There's a strange tension in the air, but then again, there always is. Every room in this factory feels like it's waiting to catch fire. Then it happens, no warning, no time to shout or duck or scream, just the blast. It doesn't sound like thunder or gunfire or anything you've heard before. It's bigger than sound. It feels like the world snaps in half. The explosion tears through the building with a roar that flattens everything in its path. One moment, you're sitting upright, hand steady on a shell. The next, you're on the ground, with your ears ringing and your face pressed into the concrete, blinking through smoke and debris. You don't know how long you've been down there. Seconds, minutes. The lights are gone. The walls are gone. The ceiling is... Where is the ceiling? Your body aches in places you didn't know could hurt. There's something wet on your face. You think it's blood, but you're not sure if it's yours. You sit up slowly, tasting metal and dust. Your head is pounding, but you're still breathing, which feels like a small miracle. Around you, everything is noise and motion. Shouting, gasping, crying, the groan of twisted beams and the sharp hiss of something still burning. The air is thick with smoke and soot, and your eyes sting as you try to see through it. You can't hear properly. The blast has taken most of your hearing with it. What's left is a high-pitched whine that won't go away. You blink and look down at your hands. They're shaking. They're black with ash, sticky with something darker. You try not to look too closely at the shapes scattered across the floor. Limbs, you think, or pieces of them. One of them is a leg, twisted at a wrong angle and very much unattached to anything. You stare at it for too long before turning away. Bodies are everywhere. Some girls are moving, most aren't. You see a face you recognise, or at least you think you do. It's hard to tell. Part of it is missing. You stumble over something soft and try not to fall. A supervisor is shouting orders somewhere nearby, though it sounds like he's underwater. He's waving people toward the exit, the way a man might wave at a dog. You follow the movement, because it's the only thing that looks like direction. Outside, the cold air hits your lungs like ice. You double over coughing, black phlegm spraying from your mouth. You gasp and retch and wipe your eyes with the back of your sleeve. Around you, girls are slumped against the wall, shaking, sobbing, silent, No one says anything coherent. No one knows who's missing yet. You sit down on the gravel and stare at your hands. They're still shaking. Someone hands you a blanket. Another gives you tea. The tea tastes like ash. You drink it anyway. They don't tell you how many died. You hear whispers. 20, 30, more. No official number is given. The newspapers don't mention it at all. There's a notice on the bulletin board the next morning about a minor incident that caused a brief disruption in operations. That's what they call it. An incident. Like someone spilled tea or dropped a tray. There's no mention of the crater inside the building, or the walls now propped up with scaffolding and hope. You go back to work the next day. You don't want to. Your body feels wrong, like it's borrowed from someone who isn't finished healing. But the factory doesn't pause for grief. There are still shells to fill, still quotas to meet. You walk back through the gate with your stomach clenched and your mouth dry. You pass by the building that exploded, or what's left of it. Part of the roof is gone. Some windows have been boarded over. The air smells of burnt rubber and iron. The replacement bench is smaller. Fewer girls sit there now. You notice who's missing. You notice who doesn't make eye contact. You sit down and start again. Fill, tamp, seal, stack. The rhythm is different now. There's a tremble in your fingers that doesn't go away. You flinch every time someone drops something. Loud noises make you jump. One of the girls has a permanent limp now. Another doesn't speak at all. You learn to work around the ghosts. There's a memorial service of sorts. Not public, not formal. One girl leaves flowers in a metal pail near the building's entrance. Another scratches initials into the back of a bench with a hairpin. No one says her name out loud. It's safer that way, easier. The supervisors discourage talk of what happened. Dwelling is bad for morale. You're encouraged to stay focused, stay productive, and remember that you're part of something bigger. You do remember. You remember everything. The sound of the blast, the taste of blood, the shape of a hand that wasn't attached to anything. You remember the smell. It clings to your uniform, even after 3 washings. You lie awake at night and wait for it to fade, but it never does. You wonder if it ever will. And still you go back, day after day, because the factory needs you, because your paycheck helps your family eat, because the war hasn't ended, because no one else will do it, because quitting would mean admitting it's not worth it, because leaving would make you feel like a coward. So you stay, you work, you breathe through the pain, you keep moving, you survive. Somehow, not whole, not unchanged, but alive. You step outside the factory gates, but the factory doesn't let go. It clings to your skin, your hair, your clothes, your breath. You've left the yellow walls behind for the day, but they're still beneath your fingernails, still buried in the folds of your uniform, still curling in the corners of your lungs, like smoke no one else can see. The work whistle may have gone silent, but your body is still buzzing. You're still carrying it, all of it, with you. You walk home down the same roads you always have, past the same shops and corners and park benches, but something's different now. People stare, not just glances, stares, long, unblinking looks that start at your hands and end at your eyes like they're trying to solve a riddle. Children whisper, adults avert their gaze, then glance back too quickly. You overhear things. Poor girl, must be sick. That can't be natural. You used to smile at strangers. Now you keep your eyes down. Your landlady eyes you with suspicion. She doesn't say anything the first week, just eyes the furniture more closely and makes small forced comments about cleaning costs. Then one evening, she pulls you aside after dinner, voice low and even. She gestures toward the cushion you always use and calls it discoloured. She says it like it's your fault the air smells odd after you've been in the room, like your very presence has left something oily behind. You offer to scrub the upholstery yourself. She declines, but her tone has shifted. She used to call you dear. Now she calls you you. Your fiancé says nothing for a while. He tries to be understanding, brings you sweets, tells you you're brave, but he starts to wrinkle his nose when you hug him. One day, he finally says it. "You smell different." When you ask what he means, he just shrugs, like turpentine or varnish, something chemical. You want to tell him that's what happens when your insides are slowly turning into an experiment, but instead, you just apologise and promise to bathe more. As if water can undo this. You try to scrub it all away. You soak your hands in vinegar. You brush your teeth until your gums bleed. You scrub at your skin with lemon peels, salt, baking soda, anything that might lift the yellow. You even buy a harsh bleach powder from a shop that doesn't ask questions, and you mix it into a paste you use on your elbows and neck. It burns, it doesn't work. The colour stays, the smell lingers. You go to bed with your hands raw and your pride thinner than your skin. The fatigue is different now. It's not the same as being tired after a long shift. This is something deeper, heavier. You wake up feeling like you've already worked a full day. You move slowly. Your limbs ache. Even small tasks, sweeping the floor, stirring soup, walking upstairs, leave you breathless. You sit down and forget to get back up. You fall asleep in chairs, mid-sentence, fully dressed. You stop dreaming, or maybe you just stop remembering the dreams. Either way, you wake feeling worse. You start forgetting things. Little things at first, where you left your scarf, what you were supposed to buy from the shop. Then names slip. Conversations fade before they're finished. You call your sister by the wrong name and don't realise it until she corrects you. You forget the month. You forget what day of the week it is. You chalk it up to exhaustion, but somewhere in the back of your mind, you know it's not just that. Something inside you is slowing down, flickering like a lamp with too much dust on the bulb. The doctor is no help. You go once out of desperation. He listens politely, takes your pulse, and tells you it's nerves. Women's troubles. Maybe a touch of hysteria. He suggests more rest, more fresh air, less factory work. As if that's a choice. He writes something down you don't get to read, and doesn't ask you to return. You leave with a packet of bitter pills, and no clearer answers. The yellow under your skin has deepened by the time you get home. You try to stay social, but people keep their distance. Even old friends seem unsure of how to greet you. They don't say it out loud, but you see it in their eyes. Discomfort, pity, fear. One girl clutches her shawl tighter when you approach, like you might pass something on to her just by standing too close. Another says she's proud of you, but doesn't invite you to her wedding. You begin to decline invitations before they arrive. It's easier that way. Less explaining, less pretending. Your house no longer feels like a refuge. The walls are too quiet. The windows let in too much grey. Your reflection in the mirror is unfamiliar. Sallow, hollow-cheeked, dimmed. You practice smiling just to see if you still can. The gesture looks wrong, like it belongs on someone else's face. You used to sing while you washed the dishes. Now the silence stretches long and sharp, and your hands tremble under the tap. And still, you go back. You wake up, you lace your boots, and you walk to the factory, even when your legs don't want to move, even when the thought of breathing that air again makes your stomach twist. Because it's what you do. Because there's no alternative. Because the factory may be killing you slowly, but the world outside it already thinks you're gone. You're not safe off the clock. You're just exposed. Out there, your glow isn't patriotic. It's suspicious. Your yellow skin doesn't mark you as a war hero, just as someone strange, someone other. The job that once made you feel important has left you chemically tattooed and socially invisible. You're too bright to ignore and too toxic to touch. The hours between shifts stretch long and empty, filled with side eyes and aches and fading memories. You count the days in bruises now, in clumps of hair, in spoons of sugar that taste like metal. You try to remember what it felt like to be ordinary, but it's slipping away. The girl you used to be, the one with clean skin, clear eyes, and jokes that didn't end in silence. She's still in there somewhere. Probably. But you haven't seen her in a while. It's inside you now. Not just on your skin or in your clothes, but deep, woven into your organs, clinging to the walls of your bloodstream like soot on a chimney. You've heard murmurs from other girls, fragments of conversation said too quietly and too quickly to be official. TNT builds up in the liver. It stores there, metabolized and forgotten by the very organ that's meant to protect you. It doesn't scream, it doesn't alert you, it just waits, quietly turning your body into its final workspace. You wouldn't know it by looking. You can still walk, still work, still joke if anyone's in the mood, but something's off. You feel heavier even as you get thinner. Your joints ache in new, unfamiliar ways. Your lower back burns after even short walks, and the skin under your ribs feels tight, stretched, like something inside you is expanding the wrong way. You tell yourself it's nothing. You've been tired before. You've been sore. It'll pass. That's what the pamphlet said. Minor discoloration is temporary. It didn't mention anything about organ failure. You cough into your handkerchief more often now. You try not to look at the colour when you pull it away, but sometimes you can't help it. It's no longer clear. Sometimes it's yellow. Sometimes it's pink. Once it was red. That scared you, though you didn't tell anyone. What would you say? That you're coughing up your own insides 1 teaspoon at a time? They'd nod. Maybe offer you tea. Maybe send you home for the day, if they're feeling generous. But they wouldn't fix it, because they can't. There is no treatment, no cure, no pills to cleanse your blood or reverse the damage. The most the factory doctor will say is that some girls are more sensitive than others. Like this is all just an allergic reaction. He offers bland sympathy, maybe a sugar cube to calm your nerves. You ask if you should stop working. He smiles thinly and tells you the country needs you, that you're an inspiration, that some discomfort is normal in wartime. You nod because arguing feels like more effort than your body has left to give. At night, the pain sharpens. You feel it most when you lie down, a dull, deep throb beneath your right ribs, like someone trying to dig their knuckles into your side from the inside out. You press your hand there, as if you could push back, as if touch could undo what months of poison have etched into your flesh. The skin there is a shade darker than the rest of you, tinged with something sickly and greenish. You wear a shawl now, even in bed, even when alone. You don't want to see what's happening to you. Your urine turns dark. The pamphlet doesn't mention that either. The girls whisper about it in the washroom, comparing notes in hushed voices, trying not to sound afraid. One says hers is the colour of weak tea. Another says hers smells like bleach. You nod quietly. Yours is closer to molasses, thick, dark and alarming. You pour it quickly, flush before anyone sees. It's easier that way, less real. The factory still sends out cheerful bulletins about production numbers and patriotic service. The posters still feature smiling women with flawless skin and bright eyes. You don't look like that anymore. None of you do. Your eyes are sunken, yellow-streaked, surrounded by shadows no powder can cover. Your smile feels like a mask, something painted on with effort, held in place only by habit. You see the same look on the other girls. You see it when they think no one's watching. Sometimes when you're alone, you try to count the ways your body has changed. Your skin, your eyes, your voice, hoarser now, rasping more often than not. Your hair is thinner, duller. Your gums bleed when you brush. Your appetite is gone. You can't remember the last time you felt genuinely hungry. You eat out of obligation, not desire. Everything tastes like metal and chalk anyway. You chew because not chewing would raise questions. You start making mistakes at work. Nothing catastrophic, nothing that gets you removed. Just small things. A missed measurement, a delay in sealing. Once your hands shook so badly you had to stop for 5 full minutes. The girl next to you noticed, but she didn't say anything. She just reached over and helped you finish your tray. Later, she left a lemon sweet on your bench. Neither of you spoke about it. Some things don't need words. You wonder how long you have. Not dramatically. Not like in novels or plays, just practically? How long until your body gives out entirely? How long before you can't get out of bed, or your legs collapse beneath you, or your heart forgets what it's supposed to do? You try to calculate, but there's no metric for this kind of thing. No chart to measure organ decay by the hour. You just keep going until you don't. You write a letter to your sister one evening, hands trembling as you fold the paper. You try to keep your words light. You don't mention the blood, or the pain, or the nights you wake up gasping. You tell her the factory's busy, that the girls are kind, that you're doing important work. You leave out the part where you wept over the toilet that morning, not because of pain, but because you no longer recognize the body you saw in the mirror. And still no one officially acknowledges what's happening. No one says the word poison. No one says organ failure. You're still just a worker, a name on a list, a number in a quota. If you collapse, you'll be replaced. If you die, there will be flowers maybe. And then the line will keep moving. The shells don't care who filled them. The war doesn't care what it cost you to help win it. You fold your stained handkerchief and tuck it into your coat. You try to stand straight, though your back aches and your vision wavers. You go to work. You sit down at your station. You pick up the first shell of the day, hands trembling but obedient. You smile at the girl across from you, and she smiles back. Both of you tired, both of you yellow, both of you pretending this is normal. You've stopped asking how much more of this you can take. The question feels irrelevant now. Your body is no longer a question. It's an answer, written in bruises, in coughs, in the bitter taste that never leaves your mouth. You don't do this alone. That's the strange part, maybe the saving part. The girls around you become more than just co-workers. They become your mirror, your shadow, your second skin. You measure your days by their laughter, their silences, the rhythm of their coughing fits. You know the sound of their footsteps, the way they hum off key, the names of their brothers and their favourite sweets. In a place built to chew you up and spit you out, they are the only softness left. It doesn't start that way. At first, everyone keeps to themselves, shoulders hunched, eyes on the trays. The rules of survival are unspoken. Don't linger, don't ask questions, don't get too attached. But routines wear people down. Over time, your movements sink. You reach for the same tools in tandem, pass materials without speaking, share glances when the supervisors aren't watching. A kind of quiet trust forms, built not from choice but from constant, shared risk. If the whole room could explode at any moment, it feels right to at least know the name of the person who might explode next to you. You sing together. Not loudly, never loud enough to cause alarm, but soft weaving melodies under your breath as you tamp powder or seal casings, old folk songs, nursery rhymes, half-remembered ballads from when you still went to dances. Sometimes the singing is shaky, sometimes it fades into humming, but it's something. A thread stretched between you and the girl beside you saying, "I'm still here. You're still here. We're still doing this." Before inspection, you help each other look presentable. You smooth collars, wipe dust from cheeks, braid each other's hair so it doesn't fall into your eyes during a shift. One girl has a knack for neat plaits, even with trembling hands. Another can restart your collar with just steam and a hand towel. You trade tips like soldiers trading rations, small skills that mean nothing outside these walls, but everything inside them. Looking tidy keeps the foreman quiet, and staying quiet keeps you safe. You share stories, not big ones, just bits of conversation carved out between tasks. You tell them about the boy you hope will write back. They tell you about their mother's cooking, or their sister's new baby, or how they once stole a peach from a market stall and got away with it. You pass these details around like sweets, letting them sit on your tongue for a moment before the work swallows you again. Some stories are retold so often they become ritual. You know each other's memories like second-hand clothing, familiar, a little frayed, still warm. There are jokes, of course, always jokes, morbid ones mostly, about glowing in the dark, about being able to set fires just by touching a doorknob. One girl insists she's going to charge men for kisses now that she's radioactive. Another says she'll haunt the foreman's teapot if she dies before payday. You laugh because the alternative is crying. And sometimes you do that too when the lights are dimmed, when the shift is over, when someone else's name is missing from the roster and no one says why. When someone collapses, you don't scream, you move. One girl steadies the tray, another checks the pulse, another finds the matron. You all return to your stations after, maybe a little paler, a little quieter, but still working. You never say it aloud, but you know the truth. It's easier to carry someone to the infirmary when you all share the weight. The girl who fainted last week is back now. Slower than before, but back. You don't ask what the doctor said. If she wants to tell you, she will. On birthdays, you do what you can. Someone brings an extra biscuit. Someone saves a corner of jam from breakfast. You fold a paper flower from scrap packaging. You hum, "Happy Birthday," in the tone of a funeral dirge and call it a gift. And it is. You don't expect parties, you expect moments. Fleeting, quiet acts of care that say, "I see you. You're still here." That's more than most people get in this place. There's a girl in your section who once lost her voice from the chemicals. Couldn't speak above a whisper for weeks. You started passing notes, silly ones. Today's dust flavour, lemon. Reminder, we are not in fact canaries, we have names. When her voice came back, she told you those notes saved her. You told her they saved you too. Neither of you were joking. You start looking for each other during breaks, sitting at the same table, sharing tea, sometimes just sitting in silence, letting the noise of the factory hum around you like static. It's not about what you say, it's about knowing someone else is close, that you're not the only one whose fingernails are darkening, that the blood in your handkerchief isn't a solitary curse. You start to wonder if you could survive this job alone. You stop wondering quickly. You already know the answer. Some days the kindness is small. A hand steadying yours when it trembles. A girl giving you her portion of sugar when you're too weak to stand. A pat on the shoulder after a long shift that says, without words, you did it. You're still alive. These gestures aren't grand. They don't make the pain go away, but they make the pain feel seen. And sometimes that's enough. You know this job is killing you. Every girl here knows it. You don't say it, but you all feel it. In your bones, in your blood, in the places where your bodies no longer work quite right. But somehow, the fact that it's killing all of you, that you're being slowly, jointly dismantled by the same silent poison, makes it bearable. It's not your individual fate, it's your shared condition. You walk home in pairs when you can, not for safety necessarily, but for presence. You lean into each other slightly when your legs grow unsteady. You talk about things that don't matter, just to hear another voice. You don't say you're scared, but you know she is too. You laugh at the absurdity of it all. You joke that the glow might be useful if the power goes out. You don't say that you feel more like a ghost than a girl. Some truths don't need to be spoken to be understood. And in the morning, you return. Together. You've learned not to expect answers, but it still stings when you're given lies instead. You go to the infirmary with your second nosebleed of the week, your hands trembling, your breath short, your stomach knotted into something that feels suspiciously like dread. You explain the symptoms clearly. You list everything. The yellowing, the joint pain, the dizzy spells, the strange bruises that don't fade. The nurse barely looks at you. She writes something on a notepad without making eye contact and tells you it's probably nerves. That word again, nerves. It's always nerves, or hysteria, or stress. If you're young, it's because your body isn't used to the work. If you're older, it's because your body's starting to fail. Either way, the fault is always you. Never the chemicals, never the factory, never the job. They listen to your symptoms with polite detachment and offer advice that might have been helpful if your problem were emotional and not molecular. Take walks, drink more milk, get fresh air. You nod because arguing will only make them more certain you're the problem. One girl was sent home for emotional instability after she fainted on the line and started crying when she came to. She was told she wasn't a good fit for the work, that her attitude would infect the others. You didn't know that attitudes could be contagious, but apparently despair spreads quicker than yellow dust. You helped clean her bench the next day. Her name wasn't mentioned again. The official literature is worse than useless. The pamphlets, the posters, the memos posted outside the lockers all repeat the same hollow reassurances. Discoloration is harmless. Fatigue is expected. Emotional volatility is a natural response to high-stress environments. They never use words like toxic or long-term damage or irreversible organ failure. Those terms don't appear in the lexicon of patriotism. Pain is just part of the package. Pride, they say, is what makes it all worthwhile. They tell you to be proud of your work, that you're on the front lines of production, that your hands are building victory one shell at a time. You want to believe them, but your lungs disagree. So do your kidneys. You wheeze after walking up a flight of stairs and can't remember the last time you slept through the night without waking in pain. You used to daydream about the future. Now you daydream about being able to lift a kettle without feeling like your spine is collapsing. When a girl dies, the cause of death is always vague. Complications, an underlying condition, an unfortunate reaction, never TNT poisoning, never overexposure. The factories have no official casualties, only non-work related health incidents. And yet the infirmary is always full. The stretchers are always in use. The turnover is constant. New girls arrive each week, all bright-eyed and pale-skinned, still believing the posters. You give them a few weeks. Some last longer, most don't. There's no compensation, no sick pay. If you can't work, you don't get paid. If you're deemed unfit, you're let go. Quietly, without ceremony. You're erased from the ledger like a smudge of dirt. You've heard rumours of girls trying to sue, or their families trying at least, but nothing ever comes of it. The government has more important things to worry about, they say. There's a war on after all. Everyone has to make sacrifices. And yet, your sacrifice is never officially acknowledged. There are no medals for glowing skin and decaying organs, no commendations for coughing up blood on the job and finishing your shift anyway. You are thanked in generic language, in newsreels and posters, as part of a faceless group of brave factory girls. Your suffering is absorbed into the image, sanitized, simplified, made palatable for the public. No one wants to see what it actually costs to keep the bombs moving. Even your friends begin to question you. Maybe it's just a cold. Maybe you're overdoing it. You should rest more. You hear it so often you start to believe it. Maybe you're imagining things. Maybe your body isn't dying. Maybe it's just being dramatic. You try to be more cheerful, to complain less, to smile when you feel like collapsing. You sit up straighter during inspections, wear your neatest smock, force your trembling hands into stillness. You learn to act like everything's fine because that's what's expected of you. But acting doesn't stop the decline. Your bones still ache, your skin still peels, your memory still blurs around the edges like a photograph exposed to too much sun. You forget what it was like to feel normal. You forget what normal even means. You just work. And when work ends, you rest, not to recover, but to survive until the next shift. Your world narrows into this cycle. Ache, work, ache, sleep. Repeat. You think about leaving. Everyone does at some point. But where would you go? Back to laundry work? To cleaning floors for rich families who look at your yellow skin like it's a contagion? And what would you say in the interviews? That you quit the one job that actually mattered? That you couldn't handle the sacrifice? You've seen the girls who leave. They fade out like ghosts, forgotten before the end of the week. You've learned that staying sick is better than being invisible. There's no safety net, no one to catch you if you fall, Only more girls to replace you. They'll sit at your station. They'll wear your gloves. They'll ask who used to work there, and no one will remember your name. You won't be mourned, you'll be replaced. That's how it works. The factory keeps moving, even when your body doesn't. Even when your breath stops. Even when your bones are dust in a field somewhere with no marker. You no longer believe the doctors. You no longer trust the officials. But part of you still wants to believe the girls. The ones who tell you that this matters, that it's worth it, that your pain has purpose. You want to believe that the sacrifice will mean something someday, that someone will remember what it cost to keep the machines running, that your yellow hands, your fractured body, your lost breath, that all of it will be more than just collateral damage. But for now, there is only silence, and more work, and more girls. The war ends with cheering. Church bells ring, flags wave, people spill into the streets with tearful grins and hastily patched uniforms. The newspapers call it a triumph. Your town organises a parade. The men come home, or what's left of them. Some are missing arms, others are missing faces. A few look perfectly whole, but speak to no one and jump at every noise. They're welcomed as heroes, given warm coats, hot meals, medals, pensions. You don't begrudge them that. You just wonder what happened to yours. There's no parade for the women of the factories, no grand farewell or commemorative ceremony. Your supervisor calls you in one morning and tells you the factory's shutting down. Munitions are no longer needed. There's a brief mention of gratitude, of course, something about national service and your vital role. But the speech is short, and the thanks are thin. You collect your things in silence. You're given your last pay envelope and told to be proud. Then the doors close, and the yellow brick buildings sit empty, like carcasses no one wants to bury. You stand outside the gates for a long while after, staring at the windows. They reflect the same dull sky you've walked under for years, but they no longer seem to look back. The factory is over. Your work is done. And yet nothing inside you feels finished. Your skin still glows faintly in low light. Your joints still ache in the cold. Your lungs still rattle in the morning, and your fingers still tremble when you lift a teacup. The war might be over, but the chemicals haven't surrendered. At first you try to rest, you sleep in. You drink warm broth. You sit by the fire with your hands folded in your lap, waiting to feel better. But the fatigue doesn't lift. The pain doesn't ease. The headaches come like clockwork, now joined by nosebleeds that last longer than they used to. You stop mentioning them to your family. They've already started talking about the future, about rebuilding, moving on, finding jobs. No one wants to hear about your symptoms now that there's peace. You apply for work, though you're not sure what kind. Your skills are specialised, and no one's asking for shell packers anymore. You list your old job on the application forms. Munitions worker, Woolwich Arsenal, 1916 to 1918, and watch the clerk's expression change. Sometimes it's confusion, sometimes pity, often it's suspicion. They glance at your hands, your teeth, your skin. One woman tilts her head and squints. "Are you quite well?" she asks. You force a smile and say it's just the lighting. You don't get the job. You try again and again. Each time you wear more powder, heavier gloves, longer sleeves. You begin to carry yourself differently. Shoulders back, chin high, like someone who has nothing to hide. But it doesn't matter. They still see it. The yellow never left. It settled into you like sediment and refuses to be scrubbed out. One man looks at you and mutters, "Poisoned goods," under his breath. You laugh too loudly in response. It doesn't help. You write to the ministry, just once, asking about compensation. A formal letter, careful language. You describe your symptoms, your service, the factory's conditions. You don't ask for much, just a small allowance, maybe help with a doctor. The reply comes 2 months later, typed and impersonal. No provision has been made for civilian industrial employees following cessation of hostilities. That's the phrase that stays with you. No provision, as if you are an afterthought. a technicality. Your friends from the factory scatter. Some move back in with family, others marry. A few disappear entirely, swallowed by cities or hospitals or graves. You keep in touch with 2 of them for a while, exchanging letters filled with bland updates and jokes that grow thinner with each page. Then one stops writing. You wait, then send a follow-up. No reply. You learn from someone else that she died in her sleep. Heart failure, they said. She was 24. You try to rebuild something that looks like a life. You take in sewing. You run errands for your neighbours. You try to smile more, to look less haunted, to fade into the peacetime crowd. But your body doesn't cooperate. Some mornings you can't stand without bracing yourself. You can't remember names or appointments or how to get home from the grocer's. You've started writing things down on slips of paper. Your coat pockets are full of reminders. Most of them are illegible by the time you pull them out. Your fiancé, former fiancé now, though no one says it aloud, drifts away. There's no argument, no tearful goodbye, just fewer visits, shorter conversations. One day, he stops by to say he's starting over in a new town. He leaves you with a stiff hug and a look that says he doesn't recognise the person he once loved. You nod, smile, wish him well. You don't cry until after he's gone, and even then, it's more out of exhaustion than heartbreak. You avoid mirrors. When you do catch your reflection, it takes you a moment to realise it's yours. The woman looking back is older than she should be, yellowed and thin, with eyes that have stopped expecting anything. You used to wear ribbons in your hair. Now your hair is brittle and falling out in patches. You used to dream about travel, about music halls and seaside holidays. Now your dreams are factory corridors and empty benches and hands you'll never hold again. The years go by. The world forgets. History moves on, and your chapter is filed away in the margins, if it's recorded at all. Children are taught the names of generals and battles. No one mentions the women who glowed in the dark. Your records are boxed, shelved, maybe even burned. You become a story some people don't believe. They turned yellow, they ask, eyes wide. Surely that's an exaggeration. You smile and say nothing. You live with the ghosts. Not the kind that rattle chains or whisper in the dark. The kind that live in your bones, your breath, your blood. The ghosts of every shift, every song hummed at the workbench, every name that disappeared from the schedule. They keep you company, in a way. They remind you that you were there, that it happened, that you mattered, even if no one remembers. And through it all, the yellow stays. Time moves on without asking your permission. The world changes its clothes and forgets who used to sew the seams. New wars come and go. The factories reopen, then close again, then get torn down to make way for offices or housing or shopping centres. The air smells different now, cleaner in some places, worse in others, but it no longer smells like TNT and scorched cotton. The yellow dust is gone, only the damage remains, tucked into forgotten bones. Decades pass. You grow older, though older feels like the wrong word. You already felt old when you were 23 and couldn't climb stairs without wheezing. Now you just feel worn through, like a coat that's been patched too many times to be called new. People stop asking what you did during the war. When you mention the factory, their eyes flicker with polite confusion. Oh, you worked in munitions, they say, and nod like they understand. You don't correct them. They wouldn't want to hear the truth. You never make the textbooks. There are no units on the munitions girls. No diagrams of liver failure, or skin discoloration, or long-term nerve damage. The stories that get told are cleaner. Men in trenches, men in planes, men at sea. The women are nurses or sweethearts or symbols. You are none of those. You were a tool, a worker, a glowing cog in a war machine that only needed you until it didn't. You're not honoured so much as omitted. Children don't dress up as you for school history day. They choose kings or queens, pilots or spies. The term Canary girl doesn't appear in their worksheets. If it does, it's a footnote, a curiosity, A faded photo with a caption that doesn't mention chemical poisoning or collapsed lungs. Maybe one child asks a teacher what it means. Maybe the teacher shrugs. Maybe they Google it and find half a paragraph. Maybe an old newspaper scan. That's the best you can hope for now. Curiosity from a stranger who won't remember you next week. Once, long after the aches in your bones have become as familiar as your own name, you hear that a memorial has been built. Not in your town, but somewhere farther north. A sculpture in a park, a plaque on a wall. It lists no names, just a dedication to the women of the war factories. You go to see it eventually. You stand in front of the polished metal and read the words twice, then a third time. It's nice, it's something, but it doesn't mention what it was like to bleed through your teeth and keep smiling. You don't cry, not because you aren't moved, but because crying would imply some new pain has been touched, and you ran out of new pain a long time ago. Instead, you press your palm against the cold surface and close your eyes. You remember the heat of the powder rooms, the sound of shoes scuffing over concrete, the soft humming that filled the silence when no one dared to speak. You remember laughter. You remember blood. You remember names that no one else does. Your photo appears in a museum once. You learn about it by accident, from a niece who was visiting with her school. "Auntie, I saw someone who looked just like you," she says, laughing. "She had yellow skin." You ask her where, and she tells you about the war exhibit in a glass case. You go the next day. The photo is small, black and white, mounted with a label that misspells your name. You were 17 in that picture, grinning like you didn't know any better. You suppose you didn't. You don't tell the museum staff that the girl in the photo is still alive. You don't correct the label. You just stand there quietly and look at yourself. The girl you used to be. The girl they once called brave. The girl who worked herself sick and never got thanked. She glows faintly beneath the glass, even without colour, even after all this time. You wonder if people notice, if they look at her long enough to see the yellow in her eyes, if they walk away thinking anything at all. Sometimes people do remember. A journalist interviews you once, years later, when you're stooped and slow but still sharp. She sits in your kitchen with a notebook and asks if you'd be willing to talk about your time in the factory. You hesitate, but then you say yes. You speak softly, plainly. You don't dramatize, you don't exaggerate. You don't need to. The facts are horrible enough. When you're finished, she thanks you. You never hear from her again. You never see the article, but it felt good to say it out loud. You don't expect legacy. That's for people with medals, with portraits, with books written about them. You expect to fade, as all things do. You keep your memories folded away in a box, not because they're precious, but because you're the only one who remembers them accurately. You keep the handkerchief with the yellow stains, the scrap of uniform that never lost its tint. A photo of the girls at the bench, their smiles crooked, their eyes already tired. You don't show them off, you just keep them close. Once in a while someone knocks at your door, a student maybe, or a local historian, or a great niece doing a project. They ask about your life. You tell them about the factory. Their eyes widen, they say, "I've never heard of that." You smile, not unkindly, and say, "Most people haven't." You answer their questions, you pour tea, you watch them scribble down your words like they're something rare. And they are now, they really are. You don't know what will happen to your things after you're gone. Maybe the letters will be tossed. Maybe the photo will get packed into a drawer and never opened again. Maybe no one will understand what the yellow fabric meant. But somewhere, in a glass case, in a worn notebook, in the corner of someone's memory, the echo of what you endured will remain. You were a Canary girl. You lit up the war from within. And though they tried to bury your name, to wash you clean from the record, the dust of what you did clings to everything they built. You were never given a rifle. You didn't storm trenches or carry wounded comrades through mud and shell fire. You didn't have medals pinned to your chest or names carved into stone monuments, but you fought a war all the same. not against a nation, but against your own body. Day by day, breath by breath, you waged quiet battle with the chemicals that seeped through your pores and settled into your bones. You didn't die on a battlefield. You died in pieces, slowly, invisibly, in silence. You never asked to be a hero, but they told you that you were one. They said your work mattered, that your sacrifice was noble, that your glow was a badge of honor, and you believed them at least at first, because it felt good to matter, to be part of something, to be seen, until they stopped seeing you, until your name disappeared from the rosters, and your hands stopped working and your skin stayed yellow long after the war had ended, until the parades passed you by and the history books forgot to mention that you had ever existed. You didn't get a monument. No statue stands with your face. No child recites your story in school. If you are remembered at all, it's as a trivia fact, a strange footnote in some museum guidebook. Did you know munitions workers turned yellow during World War I? As if your suffering were a curiosity, a side effect, a quirk of the time, not the cost of winning. Your legacy was never written in ink. It was written in the dust of the factory floor, in the coughs that lingered long after you left the building, in the silence that followed your departure. It lived in the girls who came after you, who worked the same benches, breathed the same poison, and died just as quietly. It lingered in your cracked fingertips, your faded hair, your missing breath. Your glow was not the light of triumph. It was the warning flare no one chose to see. They thanked you with silence, with pamphlets that called your symptoms temporary, with doctors who blamed your nerves, with wages that stopped the moment your body failed. You were expendable, vital only, until someone younger and paler could take your place. You gave everything and were asked for more. And when you had nothing left to give, they handed you a coat, a nod, and the heavy door behind you. Still, you kept going. You showed up. You laughed when you could. You braided the hair of girls who were dying just like you. You hummed songs to distract yourself from the taste of blood in your throat. You told jokes about glowing in the dark, because laughing was easier than screaming. You were not just a worker, you were a witness. You carried every loss with you, every faint, every explosion, every girl who didn't come back after lunch. You never stopped being brave, even when the war ended, even when your job disappeared, even when the yellow never faded from your skin. You carried that colour through the rest of your life, like a flag no one else recognised. You lived with the remnants, the scars, the wheeze, the knowledge. You made peace with being forgotten. You folded your suffering neatly into your quiet days and waited for the world to catch up. And maybe it will, someday. Maybe someone will speak your name aloud. Maybe a teacher will tell a classroom what you endured. Maybe someone will look at your photograph and wonder what it cost to smile through pain. But whether they remember or not, the truth is simple. You glowed so the war could go on. And now, at last, you can rest. That brings us to the end of tonight's story. Not of victory, but of quiet decay. Of a girl turned ghost by the very nation that once called her essential. If you're still awake, thank you for sitting with me in the lingering glow of history's overlooked casualties, where sacrifice left no statue, poison wore a smile, and remembrance came decades too late. If you'd like early access to future stories, ad-free audio, these episodes, or just want to support the show, you'll find the Patreon link in the description. You can also like, subscribe, or leave a comment with the forgotten lives you'd like unearthed next. And if you're listening on a podcast app, a rating or review helps others find their way to these stories. Sleep well.